So what is this model? So this model that we're talking about here is regarding uncertainty in life, okay? And more specifically, uncertainty in someone's income, all right? You know, I want to say I make X number dollars a year through my income. But the reality is, at any point in time, and what happens for millions of Americans is they get hurt or they get sick and they lose their jobs. Reality is that their house burns up. And so even though they made that money that they thought they were going to make, they have to spend a lot of it on a new house. There's lots of things that can lead to us losing money as well, but that's not a guarantee. We want to think that our income from work is a guarantee, but how we spend it is never a guarantee. Think about the things that we have that we buy insurance for. What are a few of the main ones that y'all have, you or your families buy insurance for?
Car insurance,
Car,
home
Health,
insurance,
health,
Homeowners.
homeowners insurance, flood insurance for your house. We have little mini insurances for, you know, if you buy electronics, a new computer or something, maybe they offer you some form of insurance if something breaks down, a so-called guarantee. It works in the same way. We have insurance contracts all over it, all over the place, and it's because of this type of uncertainty. Okay, so the economics of this, there's fundamental economic theory around this. And so first I want to kind of give you where this is coming from, and then we'll get into, you know, how this applies directly to insurance. So where this is coming from is here. I'm going to share my crime economics site. What we're talking about is the way utility works. Okay, the idea of utility again is something that brings me happiness. Okay, and a fundamental idea in economics is that if we're talking about any specific thing, the first unit of that thing, of consuming that thing, very much increases my utility. I'm very hungry right now, so if I ate one slice of pizza, it would alleviate that hunger. I'd probably be able to think a little bit better. And my utility and performance and all these other things would go up quite a bit. If I ate 5 pieces of pizza, I would maybe get some of that benefit, you know, for a little bit, but I'd also start feeling sick. So in general, the quantity consumed of something as we go from one unit to more units, initially, I think I've mentioned this in classes before, for people who are undernourished, taking a vitamin a day or getting access to vitamins in rice or something, it has extreme health effects. So the movement from 0 to 1 has extreme effects. But any of this stuff, pizza, whatever, if you start to overconsume it, your utility goes down. So as I'm moving up, I'm gaining utility, increasing well-being or happiness, as we've talked about, but you can overconsume the same thing, be it pizza or vitamins, and you can actually hurt yourself, okay? So what this shows here is this idea of diminishing marginal utility, okay? The value and the increase in well-being of those initial, that initial consumption falls as you overconsume something, okay? Now, this applies to lots of things in life, including things that are the most valuable to us, perhaps water, right? If we take water for granted because we have it for free and we can consume as much as we wanted. But if you have ever been stuck in a place where you're getting really hot and close to dehydration, one bottle of water basically saves your life. It's extremely valuable, okay? Diminishing marginal utility. So the key here is that this is true not only for vitamins, for pizza, true for the most part. I'm sure we can think of individual instances, but this is a kind of close to an economic law or trend. It's very consistent in economics for the most part. So vitamins, pizza, water. It's also There's also evidence to suggest that it is also true for income. That as income rises, income a gain of income, if you are very poor, has lots of benefits compared to the same amount gain of income if you are already relatively well off. So we have evidence of this. I'll point to this study by Angus Deaton. Okay, this study by Deaton. Kahneman and Deaton. So Kahneman and Deaton are both Nobel Prize winners. And what they did is they wanted to kind of measure utility in specific ways. And they measured it by doing a survey and taking measurements in certain ways. So utility, again, is this big idea. But they figured it's reasonable to think that part of somebody's utility or well-being is due to being happy, which they called positive affect. And so in psychology, there are a series of questions that have been tested over and over again that get a sense of someone's relative happiness. So they thought, we'll ask people these questions. Not quite the same thing is a series related to unhappiness or depression. Okay, so these not blue questions is a slightly different battery of questions that get a sense of, are you depressed or not? So utility or well-being would be gained if you're not depressed or not blue. A third one that they measured was related to stress. Okay, and this is another battery questions related to how stressful you are. So these are all kind of related to mental health and immediate mental health. A fourth one is more long-term, which they called ladder here, which is kind of your satisfaction with your career path and your job and your overall life. Are you meeting the goals in life? Which I think is reasonable to think that that's also part of well-being. So what they found here is this. They also measured people's income. So this is income here. So people with very low incomes, in the bottom 10% of income earners in the US, so making about $10,000 a year, people are relatively unhappy. People are much more likely to be not blue. So that means they're much more likely to have symptoms of depression. They are much more likely to be not stress-free, so feeling high levels of stress. And they're also have less feelings about they're doing well in their career and life. So what we see though is if you move from $10,000 to $20,000, okay, oh no, my computer. Okay, what you find is you find a lot as you increase in income. Let me turn the color for this. As you increase in income and you go up in income, being stress-free goes up quite a bit. Being happy with your career goes up quite a bit. Being not blue or depression, the less depression goes up a lot. And then being happy also goes up a lot. These are big movements in utility or mental well-being. So let's compare that with maybe a similar increase if you're already wealthy, okay? And they kind of shrink these things a little bit. But the movement from say 80 to 90,000 is probably about this far. So it's not to scale. But let's see, how much gain and stress do you have? It's flat. How much gain in being not blue do you have? It's a slight gain. It's not much. How much gain in happiness do you have? A slight gain, not much. How much gain do you have in career? It goes up pretty well, to be fair. So the basic key to this is when income is low, the marginal utility of income is high. As income rises, marginal utility falls, okay? So that suggests overall a curve between marginal utility or between utility and income that follows something like this path, okay? It starts off low, increases rapidly, and then kind of levels off, all right? So understanding that kind of basic premise for economics for these models will help you understand what's going on in our model here, okay? So to summarize what we've done so far, marginal utility decreases. We have high marginal gains at low quantities of consumption, be it income or vitamins. Our utility goes up as we consume more, but it levels off. And so the marginal utility of additional income or vitamins is less. So that suggests that we have a relationship. My computer is wanting to do some weird stuff here. Okay, that suggests we have a relationship such as this, okay? So this is what we want to look at, this relationship right here between income and utility, okay? And so our relationship has this nice curve that again starts off low, rises rapidly, and starts to flatten off, okay? This is how we illustrate the relationship between utility and income. And so I'm using a specific mathematical function here. I'm using a specific mathematical function right here. The square root, the utility is equal to the square root of income. Okay, this is just an example to kind of get us going with some of these calculations that go into this insurance model. Okay, so I am sorry, everybody. This is the wrong graph I wanted to start with. Okay, there, this one's easier. Okay, so here's our graph. And this is our relationship between utility and income. So as our income goes up, this part of the graph, the x-axis is our income increasing, all right? And as our income increases, our utility increases, okay? So the way we read this model is, let's say we have an income of $25,000, okay? So our utility at 25,000 is equal to the square root of 25,000. So our utility would be 5. And what is units of utility? It doesn't really matter because utility isn't a real thing, but you want to think of it as some kind of happiness points. that looks like an ominous smiley face. But as you rise up here, you get happier, okay? So that's the idea. Utility is not something we can measure. It's very difficult to measure. So keep that in mind. But you want to know that as income rises, so does utility. So utility at when I have $25,000 is 5 points, 5 smiley faces. Utility when I have $75,000, the utility at $75,000 is equal to the square root of 75. Again, this calculation is just an example because the book does it more conceptually. But the square root of 75 is 8.66. So that's right here, okay? So if I gain this income, I gain this utility. Let's do this middle one, okay? This middle one is, what's the utility of 50,000? Well, that's equal to 7.07, all right? So these are all, so that would be right here. Okay, so that's what we're showing at this point is the utility from certain gains. Okay, 1 second. Okay, all right. So what I want to illustrate though is this is our income when we are certain of our gains. So utility of a certain $50,000 is 7.07. Utility of getting a certain $75,000 is 8.66. Now, suppose I add this kind of conundrum. So suppose that I add that we are not guaranteed this amount, okay? We live in a reality where if we're healthy, we're going to get this amount, $75,000. So perhaps my salary is $75,000, okay? Now, maybe I have some kind of risk where I won't be able to finish out that job this year. Okay, that's the salary if I'm healthy. Okay, so I'm calling that I of H. But let's say that there's a 50-50 shot that I'm unhealthy. Okay, if I'm unhealthy, I may have some income on the side. Let's say I have 25K on the side, but I'm not going to make that additional 50K. So my income when I'm unhealthy is 25K. So now I live in this world where I have a 50% shot of getting 75, a 50% shot of getting 25. This 50 is no longer guaranteed. So I'm not getting this utility number anymore, okay? Like just as a coin flip, if you want to know what your idea, how much you're going to make, if 50% of the time you make 75, 50% you make 25, you take the average of those two. More specifically, you weight them by the probability. So this equation becomes what my expected income is. With uncertainty, I don't have a solid income number. I have an expected number. Okay, so we illustrate that using E sub I. That's our expected income. My expected income in this scenario is I have a probability of a bad outcome times the income I make in that bad outcome. So that's my unhealthy outcome. I have a 50% shot of being unhealthy. And when that happens, I make 25,000. And you add that to my probability of a good outcome, which is also 50%, 50-50. Of course, these numbers can change, right? You can adjust these probabilities very easily. But here, for simplicity, we're doing it as 50-50. And then times my good outcome. Okay, so this is equal to 50,000. Okay, so 50,000 is no longer a guarantee. It's my expected income. Okay. It's my expected income. It's what I should make, but there's no guarantee. Some years I'll make 25, some years I'll make 75. I'm never exactly making 50. So in uncertainty, utility becomes uncertain as well. So look, just as 50 is right between 25 and 75, my utility in uncertainty has to be take an expectation as well. Okay, my utility is going to be in the middle of these two likelihoods. Okay, because if I made 75 all the time, I'd be up here. If I made 25 all the time, I'd be down here. So the expected utility is right in the middle. And so we have to use this equation. My expected utility of income with a 50-50 chance is the probability of a bad outcome in utility, which is right here. In a bad outcome, I have a utility score of 5. That's not very many smiley faces. But I also have a probability of having 8.66 smiley faces. That's a good outcome, okay? The middle of this is equal to 6.83 right here, okay? So what does this say? The key point is this. When I have certainty, my income is 7.7. This is my utility. This is my utility. Let's make that a little bit darker. That's my utility when I have full information. Well, let's keep our no uncertainty. Okay, that's right there. Okay, my utility with no uncertainty is right there. My utility with uncertainty is right here. This is my utility with uncertainty. What does this mean? Well, talking off the cuff here a little bit, think about what lower utility was. More stress, more depression, less happiness. What does uncertainty do based on our model? It makes us less happy. Our expected incomes are the same. Okay, in the first income, we could be making $50,000 with certainty. In the second instance, without certainty, we're not making it. We're making either 25 or 75, but on average, it would be 50. But do you like that? Do you like those odds? Do you want to go through a year where you make that low outcome? On average, it's the same, but we don't like uncertainty in general, okay? So because of diminishing marginal utility, because of the form that our utility function takes, okay, because of that form, the risk of loss plays a much bigger role than the risk of a gain. And so if there's any risk of loss, we're uncomfortable with that. It does not bring us utility. We'd rather have a certain $50,000 than an expected uncertain $50,000. That's kind of the key point here. Okay, so I'll put these original graphs on the web for your viewing. Okay, so that's kind of the key idea here. Okay, we don't like certainty. Now, mathematically, these graphs can be adjusted. The other kind of one of the things that this is thinking about, or that it's kind of illustrating, it's illustrating that people are risk averse. Okay, the model can be adjusted for when someone is risk seeking, all right? But that's generally not what's going on. Okay. Any questions at this point? All right, let's go on to number 2 here. So, All right. So in the instance when somebody feels like they are better off with a certain $50,000 than the risk of having a higher income versus a lower income, and they don't like that, that indicates that there is room for another product to bring back certainty. And that's exactly what insurance does at its most basic level. So here, since you're less happy in your uncertain situation, you're less happy in your uncertain situation, I come along with an offer to you. So you have the probability of a poor outcome. It's 50-50, right? 50% you're healthy, 50% you're unhealthy, 50% you make 75, 50% you make 25. That means you have a risk of losing a large amount of money. You're going to, if you're healthy and then get unhealthy, you're losing $75,000, or sorry, $50,000. You're moving from 75 to 25. That means you lost $50,000. Okay. So we call that Q. The probability is P. So probability P, the payout amount is Q. My offer to you is pay me a premium. Okay. Pay me a premium that accounts for your risk of loss. And if you lose, if you get sick, I'll pay you back something. Okay. So if you pay me 25,000, I'll pay you 50,000. Okay. You pay up front for your insurance. You pay your premium of 25,000. All right. So you're going to pay me 25,000, whether you're sick or whether you're healthy. And what I will, if you are healthy, I don't pay I don't pay you anything because the insurance isn't triggered. But if you get sick, I give you an even bigger payout. I give you $50,000, okay, to make you whole again. Now, does this seem fair? It doesn't seem to make sense right off the bat, but let's go through it. Okay, let's go through it. Your state, let's say this is your new state when you're healthy. I call it I prime H. I prime H. And IH, in your original healthy state, you made 75 half the time, okay? In I prime H, you buy the premium, but you end up healthy, okay? This is gonna happen 50% of the time. Then your income is, you buy the premium, so you're buying the premium for 25,000, you pay that. But you make your full income, which is 75,000. Therefore, you end up with 50, okay? That's going to happen half the time. You have your high income, but you're paying me a premium. That happens half the time. What happens when you're sick, though? Well, you bought, in the same instance, you're buying the premium, so you're out the premium. And then you get sick, and you make this low income amount. But when you get sick, that triggers your insurance, and I pay you the payout. That's also 50,000. So what has the insurance done? It's made two uncertain outcomes have the same payout. Okay? So your income when you are insured but sick is now the same as your income when you're insured but healthy. It's equal to this amount. It's equal to $50,000. Now, what are you doing? You're going from, again, an uncertain amount, okay? This is your utility in uncertainty, to a certain amount. Now you are certain to make $50,000 because you're insured against losses and you're paying a premium in either case. So now your utility is here. All right. You have gained utility by insurance. Okay. So why do people buy things? Because it brings them happiness. It makes them less stressed. It makes them less depressed. Okay. This is the demand. This is why we have a demand for insurance. Okay. It outcomes makes outcomes more certain. Okay. Which is something that creates utility for us, because certainty makes us feel depressed, stressed out, less happy. Okay. So that's why there is a demand for insurance. It brings back certainty into our lives. It's costly though, right? It's costly. But as I said before, maybe you're thinking, well, I'm never going to make my $75,000 though, right? I'm never going to make that $75,000. But let's look again right here. If you go from 50 to 75, you're gaining this amount of utility, right? Because we're talking about overall well-being and happiness. So income does not directly relate to that. It's not the income gain that helps you, it's what you do with it, as Kahneman and Deaton showed. But the movement down is much bigger, right? So why is insurance important? Because the risk of loss, the utility from a risk of loss, is really, the utility drop is larger than the utility from the possible gain. Okay. We're more worried about losing than we are about gaining. That's why you're willing to pay the premium of $25,000, because that helps you avoid that loss. The risk, the gain, the income gain and the loss are the same, but the utility gain versus loss is not the same if you are risk averse. Okay. So if that is the case, then there is a demand for insurance. And as we talked about to start off, we have everything for insurance and people buy it, partly because of regulation, but partly for a peace of mind too. Excuse me. Because we don't want to be stuck not having insurance. So there's insurance didn't come about because of regulation. Insurance markets have crop up on their own because of this desire, this demand, and people are worried about risk. Okay. So that's why insurance is important overall. Okay. Again, we're starting from the theory and then we're building out. So lastly, the last thing I want to show you and make sure I illustrate here is different insurance offers. Okay. Different insurance offers, and just to review, and then we'll be done here. Okay. We want to look at different insurance offers in the form of insurance that is fair versus unfair versus partial insurance. Okay. So a full insurance, this is both full and fair. Oops. This insurance amount is both fair and full. That's the one I just showed you. Okay. So the payoff is this amount. Okay. That's the amount of the payoff. The premium is equal to the risk times the probability. So we're assuming that P is equal to 0.5. Okay. So this is the premium and this is the payout. Okay. And so what it does on our graph is, because of the probability of a potentially bad outcome, our initial utility is here. U, that's our utility when we are uninsured. Okay, this is uninsured. When we engage in that insurance contract, we pay that premium, we get that payout if we're sick, we solidify this amount. This is our income when we are insured, and it's a guarantee. Our utility moves back to the utility curve. And so this is our utility when we're insured. And we get this gain, right? And we do not lose any expected income. All right. Because remember, on average, we make 75 or 25. And now we're on, so that's our expectation is 50 in the middle. So a full insurance has pretty much only a utility gain, a full fair insurance. Okay, but what if I offer you a contract? There's still a market for insurance, even if it's not full or fair. So a unfull, okay, let me make sure we're having our comparisons here. So if we had our full insurance contract or full and fair, I'm going to call that U full and fair. Okay, so this is the comparison. Okay, it's the insurance we get when we have a full and fair insurance, just like this one here. So I'll call this one U full and fair. Okay, all right, so what if it's unfair? Let me make sure I do this right from my notes. If it is unfair, this is going to happen. I'm going to ask for a premium that's greater than the payout. Okay, I'm going to ask for a premium that's greater than the payout. So remember, the payout here is still the same. Okay, the payout here might still be the same for you. It's going to be the thing that makes you whole when you get sick. Okay, so let's make the payout the same. We're going to keep the payout the same, but I'm going to charge you a little bit more for it. Remember how here I only charged you 25? Let's say I charge you a bit more. Maybe I charge you 30 or 35. Maybe this is the new premium. So my premium, so this is again Q. Okay. This is R. So R is greater than 0.5 of Q, right? I'm charging you more than kind of a 50% rate. So what this does is if you're healthy, you pay this premium. If you're sick, you pay this premium, but you get a payout. Either way, you end up with this income, okay? So this insurance is fully covered. You're fully covered. So you're basically setting yourself with a certain income, but it's just a lower income. So your utility goes to here. This is your utility if you have an unfair contract. Okay. Now, note, for another comparison, if you were uninsured, you'd be down here, right? So you're still getting, there's still room, there's still a market for unfair insurance because there's still a utility gain. Okay. There still might be, when you usually will be, a utility gain. Okay. So there is still a market for unfair insurance contracts. All right. An unfair insurance contract is one where it is full. Okay. It's full, but you pay more. Your rate you're paying is more. Okay. Why would insurance companies be able to do this? Because if they have, if there is not free exit where you can shop around for insurance, i.e. there's monopoly insurances or very few options, or it's hard to find them. Another way is if there's not free exit out of a contract and free entry into another contract. If it's hard to change insurances, okay? If you leave your insurance, maybe one won't accept your pre-existing conditions or something like that. Both of those set a market scenario where the company can charge more than a competitive market would. In a competitive market with free entry and exit, we'd expect to see fair pricing, okay? Fair and fair pricing. In a monopolistic market or a sticky market or a non-competitive one or one with less information, we'd expect to see unfair pricing. So people paying a little bit more than they would be otherwise. Sound familiar? All right. Last one is partial insurance. Okay. Partial insurance is where the payout isn't the full difference between IH and IS. Okay. So we go back and reset it, but this is still fair pricing. So again, this would be utility if you are in a full and fair contract. This would be the utility if you are uninsured. Okay, this is your utility if you're uninsured. Okay. Now, what about a partial contract? One that doesn't have the full payout. Okay. Well, in this one, if you are, whether you're healthy or sick, you're going to pay some premium. And let's say it's this amount. Okay. Remember, premium before went all the way to IF, it was 25,000. But let's say this premium is only a little bit. Okay. And so that's the premium, and this is the payout, PQ. So this is still fair because R is equal to PQ. Okay. So this is fair, but it's just a smaller insurance contract. All right. So we can get that all the time. You know, I can get a much more robust insurance contract, but I'm younger and fairly healthy, and maybe I don't decide not to. All right. So what that does is it brings our outcomes, it narrows our outcomes, not all the way to the middle, but it narrows our outcomes to this gap. So I'm always paying this premium. If I get sick, I get this payout. So it narrows our possible outcomes along this line. And the expected value of this income is here. So this amount is when I am insured with partial insurance. Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, I don't want to say that. I want to say this is my utility. This is my utility with partial insurance. Okay. So there's still a utility gain. So there's still a U gain with partial insurance. Okay. That means that there will be a market for partial insurance. Okay. So I'll cut this video up and put it on the web, but to summarize, insurance markets creep about because of the demand for people to be certain with their outcomes in life. We follow a mathematical model that illustrates that. And what this shows is that an insurance contract can take someone from an uncertain outcome to a certain one, which doesn't increase their income overall, but it does increase their utility, increases their happiness, lowers their stress, and lowers their depression. Now, again, that part of the story is story I'm adding to the mathematical model to help us understand what's going on. But there's a demand for insurance because of those utility gains. Lastly, a fair and full insurance contract is one that makes you totally whole and one that makes your income outcome the same as if you had a certain outcome for there. So having a given $50,000 gives us our full utility. If that doesn't exist because we can't get 50 for certain, we can get 25 or 75 uncertainly. The insurance contract acts basically to give us a certain $50,000, which we like. That's fair and full. But even if that's not the case, there's still a market for insurance if companies charge a bit more or unfair pricing. There's still a utility gain from being uninsured because you still get a little bit of insurance there, and you become better off in terms of uncertainty. Or an insurance contract could be partial. Okay, if it's partial, it's not making you whole again all the way, but you're paying a smaller premium for a smaller gain, and that narrows the width of outcomes. Instead of being 25 or 75, which is